Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. How did Brent Ashworth get interested in collecting Mormon memorabilia? We'll find out that it started as early as 7 years old, and it has to do with Heber J Grant. So we're also going to see his first edition copy of the Book of Mormon. It's in amazing shape. It's actually been restored, and he's going to share it with us. And we're going to dive into other Mormon documents. You know, Brent was called on a mission to share some of his documents with Rick Turley, and Rick's writing a new book on Joseph Smith, a new biography, kind of like Rough Stone Rolling. So you won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out.
At any rate, I got my start by a box of my grandmother's things that were being destroyed, burned back in '56 when I was 7 years old. And there was one box. You want to sit down?
I'll sit down too.
Well, there was one box that got saved, and I didn't get it for a few years. So I asked my mother, "Did you save anything in Nana's stuff?" And she says, "Yeah, there was one box that was up in the rafters of the garage, and I had your dad go get it before we moved." My dad was a designer to build a home on the East Bench. And it was a new house in '56, '57. And we were living in my grandfather's basement when he died. And so the family just cleaned it out. I remember him saying he sure wished he could pull his car in the garage, but he didn't have the heart to go through his late wife's things, my grandma. Well, when he died, the kids didn't have that qualm. They just took it out back and built a big fire and threw everything in. And I can only remember from that day two things. I remember it was strange that nobody was looking at anything. They were just dumping these papers in the fire. And I remember Pop's false teeth in the ashes.
Oh, no.
And I remember, I guess, three things, because I remember two uncles fighting over a pair of socks. That's all I can remember. But then I asked my mother a few years later, "Did you save anything?" And she said, at this point I was a deacon, so I was 12. And she says, "Yeah, there was one box in the rafters." And I pestered her till we found it at the new house. She said, "Man, you can just have it. We've never, there was probably more trash." And I found a dozen letters of Heber J Grant written to my grandmother between 1931 and 33, the Great Depression. And then this card right here, I brought it out. That's Heber J's death back there from his home. I wanted to show you that because that's my first autograph. And it's just a card with his motto on: "That which we persist in doing becomes easy to do. Not that the nature of the thing has changed, but the power to do has increased." And then he signed it, beautifully signed it with his signature. And
where did you say the desk was?
What's that?
You said you had Heber J Grant's desk?
It's in the corner over here. It's kind of buried, but that's Heber J's desk from his home.
Oh, right here.
Yeah. Got a roll top on it. I got pictures of him on top and stuff. They changed all my pipes in back recently, and I had to pull everything out of the back.
So that's why it's so covered up.
So it's a bit of a mess. But anyway, so that gives you a bit of an overview of that. I brought a few LDS things if you want me to.
Yeah, let's do it.
Show you a few of those. Well, Mormonism started with the Revelation, which we know is the Book of Mormon. And I've had over 150 copies of this first edition go through my hands the last, it's been 68 years now.
Yeah, I can tell that's an old one.
Yeah. This is one I've kept because it's got notes all through it. There's the title page.
Is that a first edition?
It's 1830. It's first edition Tom.
So I'm sure Robert Messick has seen that.
Yeah, he's been in here. I've shown him a bunch of different books. Yeah, he's a nice guy. Anyway, it's the only edition that had a 2-page preface to it. And Joseph Smith said, "Look, I've tried to get 116 pages back, the lost manuscript. It hasn't come. So I want them turned in. Anybody that's got them." So that 2-page preface was only in the first edition.
Oh.
And then back then they put the witnesses were put at the last 2 pages. You had the 3 witnesses there.
Oh, I'm blocking it. There we go. Yeah.
And then you had the 8 witnesses on the very last page. There's the testimony of the 8 witnesses.
Okay.
And the book itself, of course, the chapters were put in by a non-Mormon that set the type, John Gilbert.
There you go.
When I was teaching D&C at BYU years ago, in between jobs, actually I was at a job, but I took time off at noon to go teach a D&C class. 51 students, and I took a lot of originals, and I'd run into them for years after, and they said, that was the best class, but it was just fun to share, original things with them.
Yeah.
But as I told them when we were down there, when I was teaching there, this would have been the 90s, the religion faculty were trying to raise money to put a new tombstone on the grave of John Gilbert.
Oh.
Because they thought he deserved one. He didn't have a tombstone. I don't know if it disappeared or what. But that's what we were throwing money in to try to add a tombstone. But he set the type. He had the world's longest run-on sentence, as far as I know. There's no, you had to put in all
no punctuation.
No punctuation, no capitalization, really, and such. Because one long sentence for 590 printed pages. I don't know how much. But, there's no verses put in, but he did put the chapters in, and Joseph redid those later, put them in more logically the way they should go.
Okay.
But it wasn't until Orson Pratt in 1879 put the verses in that we got the verses, and then other things have been added since then. But this particular copy...
That looks like in really good condition.
Yeah, and it's got notes all through it. It's got 200 pages of notes. And it was the story I got when I first got it many years ago, and it's the reason I hung on to it, was that it was used at the School of Prophets in Kirtland.
Oh.
So it was kind of a work copy, So, anyway, but subsequent to that, we've learned a lot more about it.
Do we know who owned it? Do we know?
We've learned that it was Frederick G. Williams' copy.
Oh, okay. The first bishop. Or was he first or second?
Joseph, he was the second counselor in the first presidency.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm thinking of Partridge. That's what I'm thinking of.
Jesse Goss was picked, but he didn't get put in. But they put Frederick G. Williams in his place. And we've since done a lot of research on this. There's some Joseph Smith handwriting in it, we believe, where he wrote a couple of notes on himself. But it's got a lot of writing in it. There's a lot of pages with about 200 pages have notes all over it. Which you never see in the first edition, hardly ever.
Yeah.
Because it went through many people and they didn't write in them. But this one got written in quite a bit. And there's a couple of notes in, at least a few, in what appear to be the prophet's handwriting. There's one there. His signature.
You think that's Joseph Smith's handwriting?
Well, we think so.
Looks like it, yeah. Looks like it.
Looks like it. And we know that Frederick G. was his clerk, so it makes some sense.
Yeah.
But Professor Frederick G. Williams, that just retired recently, did a long article for BYU Studies. I don't think it's been published yet. Here's another one here with Joseph's.
Oh, yeah.
Handwriting. But at any rate, Dean Jesse looked at this and said, well, yeah, this is Frederick G. Williams' copy. His notes are all through it. But we also think this is earlier than the School of Prophets that was used in the first Indian mission. Because Frederick G. was just reading the Book of Mormon the first time, the Indian mission with Parley Pratt, Ziva Peterson, that group, when they went out to Missouri and then they went to Nebraska for a while. So that's what became Nebraska. But anyway, if you want to hold.
Yeah, cool.
So that's the first edition he bought.
Good thing on the spine here.
That's a special copy. I don't know of another copy. I had one other copy years ago. It was John Whitman's, one of the 8 witnesses. And it had about 150 pages of handwriting in it. But other than those, they seldom did anything. They might sign them, but they don't have they're not studying it like it's just came out, Because usually it went through a lot of people. The Phineas Young copy that Brigham saw went through the whole Young family, and Parley Pratt got converted from reading the Book of Mormon. I mean, the Spirit touched him before he met a missionary. And that happened to quite a few people. So Joseph made about 2,000 changes of it for the second edition.
2,000, you said?
About 2,000, and they were mostly punctuation, ands, ors, things like that were in the wrong place. Changed the meaning. And, of course, he got criticized for that, but he shouldn't have been because John Gilbert did a good job. He did what he could, but he didn't know the meaning. He wasn't a member. He didn't know the meaning of it. And as a prophet, he went through it and corrected a lot of things.
Yeah, that's cool.
But anyway, that gives you a little idea. So I have a piece of the manual.
I can't believe how good condition that is because I was at have you ever heard of the Nielsen Naylor group? They're a polygamous group.
I have. Yeah.
They're in Bluffdale, and they had an 18, I can't remember if it was 38 or 41, but
37?
maybe.
Edition.
But it was in really rough shape, like the cover had fallen off. And
this one was in bad shape, but it's been restored.
Oh, it's been restored. Okay.
See, all of this has been laid down on new leather.
Oh, okay.
And this is all original here, but this is original, but it had to lay it down again.
Oh.
So the book doesn't, fall apart.
Right.
But it's a good condition for what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's that, and then this is the only known set of the signatures in private hands of the three witnesses. So this is a legal case written out by Oliver Cowdery. This is after he's out of the church. See old Cowdery down here.
Okay.
It's up in Walworth County, Wisconsin. He left the church, ran for political office. You probably know a little about the fact that they kept questioning him on, is yours the name that's attached to the Book of Mormon? And he said yes. And he lost the elections, maybe due to that.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, Cowdery, of course, rejoined the church later, the last part of his life.
Mm-hmm.
His brother-in-law, he came to live with his brother-in-law, David Whitmer, and he married Whitmer's. Married into Whitmer's family. And so this is a letter of David Whitmer. All three of these are really rare handwritings. This is an interesting letter because it was written to a young man that used to live in David Whitmer's home, Francis Armstrong, who was later mayor of Salt Lake. And the Armstrong residence is a bed and breakfast up in Salt Lake. My wife and I stayed there once.
Okay.
But at any rate, as a young man, he'd lived in Richmond, Missouri with David Whitmer for a while. So David's writing this letter the year before he died. And he said, "Dear friend, will you please do me the favor to get me a concordance of the Book of Mormon and any other aids or helps to the study of the Book of Mormon that are published out there? Please send them by mail, and I will remit. What is the price of the reference books of Mormon, your friend David Whitmer? Please send them right away." Well, he was working on a pamphlet that addressed all believers in Christ, which he published at his own expense, in which it went on for 40 pages saying why he'd left the church, okay? And but then he gives his original testimony again, word for word almost. And that was true of all the three witnesses. None of them ever denied their testimony. I thought the Lord really blew it when all three of them left the church. But two of them came back in, and the third witness that stayed out was just as strong as the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Maintained his... the rarest of all three of them is Martin Harrison. He was a generation older than the other two. He was really Joseph's father's age. We know about Harrison as losing the manuscript, but this is his only signature known in private hands right there. That's the only way you can complete a set is to get him with the other two.
Yeah.
It's not an LDS document. This is the earliest known signature we got of him. This is 1826.
Huh.
And it's a criminal bond, we think for a relative, because the guy's name is also Harris. But we've never been able to figure out who Caleb Harris is. We've done a lot of genealogy on him. But that, as far as I know, and as far as the church knows, is the only complete set of their signatures outside the church archives.
Huh.
So that's kind of important.
And I'll bet they would love to get their hands on that.
Yeah, that's an important group, and I'm sure it'll eventually go up there. So that's, I just could bring a few things that brought that. This is a special piece here. When Joseph, we all know he went to Liberty Jail. Do we know how he got out of it? Well, he was getting moved by Sheriff Morgan. At the end of he and his brother Hiram and Caleb Baldwin and Alexander McCrae, they were getting moved to Boone County by Sheriff William Morgan, and they escaped.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they got away. Well, this is Morgan's. This is the original escape letter. So this is Morgan saying that these names them all here, and they escaped. He says without his connivance and help. Nobody believed him. The sheriff was tarred and feathered.
Is this the one where he gave him his horse and let him go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But he tried to cover his butt, by writing this letter, and it went to the court. I wrote the state of Missouri many years ago when I got this, 30 years ago, and I wrote back, says, no, you got the original. Says, we just have a copy, because the Missouri archives burned down in 1838. So they'd had a copy, made from it.
Oh.
But that's the original of we call that in church history the escape letter. That's the escape letter. And nobody believed the sheriff that he did it without their connivance or help, And the Missourians were pretty mad.
Yeah.
He let the prophet and the other leaders go. And Lyman White was the other one. Anyway, that's the original escape letter, which is kind of that's the important piece, and that's why I sent it. It's on one of my lists to Rick the other day.
Rick Charlie.
Yeah, but we need.
Yeah, we didn't finish talking about that. So you've been called on a third mission.
I have. I've been called on a mission to. Well, my wife and I served at the MTC for a while. Then we served another mission in Massachusetts. So this is really my fifth mission. If you want to count
your third church history mission.
Third church history mission, and I was called a couple of weeks ago to help with the biography of Joseph Smith. Rick Turley's heading that. It's the only other time I'm aware of besides Talmadge where the first presidency is asked member to write an official history, and I have the manuscript of Jesus of Christ. I don't know if I've told you that.
Oh, no.
I have the printer's manuscript. I didn't bring it, but if we do another thing, I can bring it. It's just big. It's big and bulky.
I bet it is.
But I have the manuscript that he typed in the temple after he got through writing the handwritten one, which the church has. And so
this is a typed copy, you said?
This is typed with his notes in it, too. But he typed this in the temple. It was the one that the book was printed from. I spent a whole year tracking the first edition against this. This is the printer's manuscript. In other words, that's the official title. This would be the printer's manuscript because the book was printed off of this manuscript, which was found in about 25 years ago in a pillowcase wrapped in twine when John Talmadge, his youngest son, died.
Oh.
And they were going through his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what's this, And it turned out it was the printer's manuscript for the manuscript that the book was printed off. Now, the reason that's important is that Talmadge never did another manuscript, but he made changes in the book for the rest of his life. So later editions are different. The first edition all came from this manuscript. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And now Rick Turley's been asked by the First Presidency, since the Joseph Smith Papers project is winding down, although I think they'll always be adding things to it. I've got some things, I know other people do too, that aren't in the Joseph Smith Papers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they need to be put in. And it's just like the George Washington Papers or the Thomas Jefferson Papers. They're still adding to them when they find things, I mean, that's the idea, is you try to get all of them, but things are still going to turn up, over time. And they said that Thomas Jefferson in American history wrote more letters than any other of our founding fathers. They've counted over 10,000 letters that he wrote, but almost all of them are institutionalized. I've got I've got 2 of his letters, but almost all of them are institutionalized. But then about 3 years ago, Jennifer Mackley and the family Wilford Woodruff started the Wilford Woodruff Papers Project, and they're already at 43,000 pages. I think the number of letters is like 15,000 letters or something.
Wow.
So Jefferson had nothing over Wilford Woodruff. Wilford Woodruff wrote our history, basically, from the day he was in there. And one of my favorite pieces I didn't bring is a piece that he wrote 2 years before he joined the church in 1831. He didn't join until December of 33. But in 1831, it's not dated other than 1831, and it's signed Wilford with 2 L's, which was the way he signed his name originally.
Oh, really?
One of the L's later.
Oh.
But he was always known as Will Woodrow, so when he was Will, it was 2 L's. But he wrote Wilford with 2 L's originally. And this is signed that way. It's only dated 1831, but I think it must be around 4th of July because he's paying tribute to the Founding Fathers. Now, this is 2.5 years before he's a member of the church. And he's saying, I hope they're on some Elysian plane of heaven that they've earned for laying the foundations of our liberty. He didn't know anything about the 3 kingdoms and all that stuff, but he's described the celestial kingdom pretty well. And here was the man that was going to do their work for him 47 years later in the St. George Temple. I used that in the high priest group lesson when we still had high priests that we were teaching years ago. And I said, don't you think the Lord knows the beginning from the end? And he prepares each one of us for doing something. I said, he keeps his eyes on the prophets, sure, and the elect ladies and that kind of thing. But I think he's got his eyes on every one of us, And I think he prepares each one of us for our little part on the play, whatever that may be. Maybe my part's collecting things and sharing them. I don't know. But, we have other parts, each one of us, if we're parents and, family members and have spouses and other things. So to me, that's kind of a spiritual thing, to find that of Wilford's. But anyway, I've got a lot of things like that. I've got the letter that Wilford wrote about him and Brigham coming.
So I was going to ask you before you move on to that.
Yeah.
Have you talked to John Turner? Because he's coming out with the biography on Joseph Smith this year.
I don't know if I have. No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think I have.
So he's missing all this stuff that Turley's going to get, apparently.
Well, I don't know. I think that there are some things that are coming to Turley because of his, assignment.
Yeah.
And probably some things that we didn't know about. I've told him about some things that he wasn't aware of.
Okay.
So, in fact, when I showed him this letter, it's in my cabinet.
Yeah, you can go ahead there.
But when I showed him the escape letters, I got to have that for the book.
Oh, yeah.
And there are different things.
So they just scan it in and give it back to you?
I don't know what they're going to do, but
because you still have it.
My first meeting with him on the 29th, a week from today.
Okay.
So he'll probably give me a little more information.
Okay.
We've talked around the subject, at this point, but we haven't. I spent one full day with him just showing him a few things. And about every one, he says, I need that, So,
yeah.
And I said, well, it's available, so whatever you need.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Brent Ashworth. In our final conversation, we're going to do one final walk through the bookstore, see some early sacrament trays, as well as this cool early 1900s phonograph with a record from Bing Crosby. You won't want to miss this conversation, though. It's only available to newsletter subscribers. Go to gospeltangents.com/newsletter, and I'll send you a secret link to the final part of our conversation. Sign up today.
A little louder, a little softer.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt, so check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.